Hey, you want to see something really scary?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I'm gonna scare the hell out of you.
What was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
What's blood for, if not for shedding?
Welcome to Fright Night.
Welcome back to Jump Scare. I'm Betty.
And that would make me Shad.
This week we're celebrating anniversaries of Saw and Paranormal Activity.
Yes, it's 20 years for Saw.
And 15 years.
15 years.
15 years for Paranormal Activity. Guys, come on. I only memorized the Saw. That Paranormal Activity was like, fuck that Paranormal Activity. They stole the spotlight from Halloween. Halloween was the top indie film of all time. And
but it had already been taken away by Blair Witch in 1998.
Oh, it was the Blair Witch. Oh, yeah, that's right.
So you want to pack that indignity up in a bag and just put it away?
Yes, you're right. I feel ashamed right now. But you know what? Fuck Paranormal Activity. Okay? Those last two were terrible. I was gonna get the FU out either way. So Saw. Now I don't remember watching a trailer for this film at all. I mean obviously there were trailers, but it's not one that stands. But I do remember my at the end.
Yeah, I don't think I really saw a trailer for it either. I literally watched it. I got off of work and went and caught a late show of it just because I was like, it was Halloween when I got off, or the day before Halloween, something like that. And I'm like, it was the only scary movie playing at the time. It was the only horror movie there. And I'm like, well, I'll go see this and see what it's about. It was a packed theater. And yeah, the end happens and everybody in the place was like, oh shit, I did not see that coming.
Now, for the horror newbies, the film was created by both Australian filmmakers, James Wan and Lee Warnell, who obviously have gone on to create like
a lot of
complete universes. Yeah, they went off to do many a thing. Saw is the 5th highest grossing horror film franchise, which that's saying a lot. And I would like to say, now we're not going to be like, oh, indie gore and go back, because obviously there's, you got the grandfather of gore. There's many other titles and, filmmakers that have that. But like everyone right now is like obsessed with this Terrifier 3 movie, which I'm just like, okay. But I'm not a gore whore. That's not my bag. I'm not about that. I just feel like you only do that, or it's done mostly when there really isn't story. It's just lazy, in my opinion. But that's just me. Maybe you're into that. To each their own. Everyone, as long as you're enjoying a film, it doesn't matter. But it's just too excessive for me, But this film, I mean, think about another film like it. Like, it really broke and created a whole other subgenre.
Yeah, this was really the first of the like torture porn movies that all came out. Like, because after this, there was all the stuff like Hostel and all the imitators of Saw and Hostel that came out after that. And, this one doesn't get a lot of credit for, in the 80s, every year you had a new Friday the 13th, a new Nightmare on Elm Street, or a new Halloween coming out for a little bit. And you could kind of look forward to every year at a certain point. It was like, oh, there's going to be a new, entry in the franchise. And then all that kind of went away in the 90s. And it wasn't until Saw that it brought it back to like every year you knew at Halloween, in October, there was going to be a new Saw movie that was going to try and, up the ante and do something crazier than the last one. And, I always loved that fact because, in the 80s, I was one of the ones that was always looking forward to the next Friday the 13th. You knew they weren't always going to be great. That most of them were going to be like, this doesn't make any sense. The continuity doesn't matter. It doesn't work with the other films. But you were still excited just to go see that movie when it came out on Friday the 13th or when it came out. You just wanted to go see the new installment of it.
Yeah.
And that hadn't been in a long time. So when Saw came out, I think they finally did a commercial where they said, like, if it's Halloween, it's Saw. It's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm glad they did it. So from 2004 to 2010, they had one out every year.
And let me tell you, at the start of Lionsgate, so this is a Lionsgate film. At the start of they've done so many horror films. But like slasher wise, I feel like Saw really jettisoned them up there because it's just so like later on you would see like The Descent and like Cabin Fever. But like before at the beginning of like 2000, like 2003, you have like Monster Man. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you have movies like The Clowns 2. So really I feel like Saw like really propelled them over within the genre.
And the cast in the first one, now a lot of these people would come back for various Saw movies, but you had the first one, but you had Carrie Elways playing Dr. Lawrence Gordon. And you also had Danny Glover, who this is, I think, the first and only horror movie he's done. I can't really think about him being in any other kind of horror movies. And you had Dina Meyer from Starship Troopers, showing up in there. You had, of course, the great Michael Emerson, who I had seen him in things throughout the years. And even though I think Lost had premiered at this point, but he hadn't been in it yet. But just seeing this guy, you automatically go, oh, well, of course. He's the fucking guy behind everything. Just look at him. He looks evil as shit.
Yeah.
And so you saw him and you immediately were kind of like put to the fact that, you believe that this guy was going to be the one behind it. And, of course, you had Shawnee Smith coming back into horror. She'd been doing TV for years with that show Becker with Ted Danson.
Yes, I totally watched that show.
Yeah, I used to watch that too. It was kind of like the comedic version of House, to be honest.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah. And you had her coming back into, making her horror return, even though she only has a small part in this first one. And of course, you had kind of an unknown guy at the time, Tobin Bell, coming in as who you thought was just a minor character in it, laid in a hospital bed. And turned out he was the mastermind behind everything.
For real. That's really like, okay.
And that guy went from being kind of an actor that you had never heard of to being like the next big horror icon was Jigsaw. He was the first new one to come out since really Ghostface in Scream that you could have. And what's funny is it's not even really his face that you associate with Jigsaw. It's the little Billy the puppet. It's a little Billy puppet, but you know his name and his voice. And I also love the fact that when they started doing these movies, they started customizing the trailers for some of them. Because I saw a trailer for one of them at Universal Studios here in Orlando, and they had him come on and in the voice say, "Hello, Orlando, I want to play a game with you." And it's a cheap marketing ploy, but it brought the house down. People were like, "Holy fucking shit, he said Orlando!" and just like freaking out.
Yeah.
Which I always think back to the Simpsons episode where their Spinal Tap comes to town, and he holds the guitar out, and on the back of it, it says Route 101. And he's like, as we were driving down Route 101 to come into town today, and they're like, he's driving on our roads.
I cannot. But for sure, they definitely Kaiser Sosa us.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, you didn't see that coming the first time because I didn't even really recognize that was him. This movie's 20 years old. If you haven't, you know who the killer is by now.
Yeah, if you don't know, then you just entered the genre. If you haven't at least seen one, there's 10 movies. There's 10. So
yeah,
you must have seen at least one of them.
Yeah, and like I said, you really didn't know. Tobin Bell had been in things throughout it, but he was mostly just character parts or small, cameos on different things. He wasn't anyone that was well known. But after this, he became well known. And it's a combination of his voice and just, he stays calm all the time. And that's a very unsettling thing.
Yeah.
Because, Freddy's running around laughing, making, cracking wise and doing this. Jason and Michael Myers are just quiet and coming after you. He's just calmly explaining to you what an asshole you are and why you deserve to be in this thing. He's not yelling at you or screaming at you. He's just like, Frank, you're a lousy person. You cheat. You do all these things. I have put you in this horrible trap to teach you a lesson because I want you to be better.
Yep.
It's almost like a parent punishing their child. And he's just calmly explaining. He's not mad. If they get out of it, he's like, good for you. Good for you.
And he lets them go and sticks to his word.
He sticks to his word and lets them go. So that's part of the thing that I think has kind of appealed to it, is that people have the feeling like he would, like I'd be in that trap and I'd get out of it and he'd respect me and let me, he would let me go.
Yeah.
It's kind of like people were like, I want to earn his respect.
Yeah. So they're like thrown in these like life-threatening situations, and like you said, they are tests or games, like he says, and they have to survive through like the physical and psychological like aspects that go through. They have to go through. So it's just like you're on this crazy ride and you just don't know. You're like, is this person gonna fucking be able to make it out? Like are you rooting for them? And then you're rooting for some people when you find out what they've done or how they've handled the situation, because there's characters in there that you're like, yeah, fuck this guy. Like, this guy's a terrible person. Like, they can't be surviving,
Yeah, I don't care what happens to this guy. I'm glad he got caught in the trap and got his,
Yeah, so you're rooting as an audience.
Soles of his feet ripped off or whatever happened. Horrible thing happened to him.
Yeah, to some degree, the audience is rooting for their, the people that they like.
Yeah, but at the same time, also, there's a few of them that you're like, okay, this person's a drug addict. That's bad, but they could be redeemed. They
didn't deserve to die, but at the same time, they are killing themselves. So that's the whole like psychological thing. Like, they're doing that to themselves every single day. So are they gonna fight for their life?
That's one of the characters in the first one, was the guy who kept cutting himself, and he said, you've fake suicide several times. You've cut yourself a little deep several times, but nothing enough to end your life. Well, now if you want to get out of this, you're gonna have to cut yourself very badly. So I want to see, how badly do you really want to get out of this? Do you really want to live? Or if you want to die, all you got to do is just sit here?
I was heartbroken because once I saw Carrie Elwes there, I was like, no!
No, not the Dread Pirate Roberts.
Not the Dread Pirate Roberts.
This was kind of a departure for him, too. Because,
big time.
He had been in more like the romantic comedies and then some dramas and that. And for him to pop up in this was kind of a surprise at the time. And now, over the course of the series, you had people come back. Now, Carrie Elwes would eventually return. Shawnee Smith would be in quite a few of these. Wink, yeah. And but really, the people that didn't come back in this was Danny Glover never came back. And I know, yes, he didn't make it through this movie, but other people that don't make it through the movies have made it to return in the movies. Soap opera style. They flashbacks, flash sideways, whatever. People
what
show
you
up.
didn't see is when the camera cut away, he actually survived and got out.
He got shot, but he managed to crawl out and dial 911 on his cell
phone. I shot
phone.
him 6 times. I shot him 36 times. You're like, okay.
If Michael Myers can survive those 6 shots, I'm sure Danny Glover could make it.
Let me tell you, Loomis was just a terrible shot.
It could be. He may have missed him all 6 times.
It was like, no, he needed to be like right, and he was like kind of on the side. He was just a bad shot. He did shoot him 6 times though.
That's true. He emptied the gun. He didn't necessarily shoot him.
Well, I think Michael just threw himself off the fucking ledge, to be honest.
He was like, just tired of getting shot at.
Yeah, he was like, fuck this. He must have shot him at least one time, because yes, he does react to it. So I'm not going to be a complete asshole about my favorite movie, but anyways. Yeah, you go on to see so many different torturous things. And you know what was the most torturous thing? And let's say just film one, because I'm going to do all 10 films. Just celebrating the first one, right? Where they were at that dirty ass bathroom or holding cell, whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah.
That was the scariest part of the movie for me. I was like, I would have just picked up whatever sharp bullshit was next to me and just slit my throat. I'm not even trying to survive out of this, because when I do, I'm gonna have to rip my fucking clothes off, take a bath in alcohol. Okay, I'm gonna burn my eyes. Like, you just keep the eyes open. You're like, like burning alcohol, because that room was fucking filthy. Like, they must have gotten, like, I don't know how many diseases after leaving that room. It was like, yeah, you survived, but I hope you got a tetanus shot. Like, you know,
a tetanus shot, a rabies shot.
All the shots.
Maybe a hepatitis. Like, there's a lot
I need the survival cocktail, please.
Yeah, please give me every shot. Give me the shots when you're going into, like, the third world country to work in the Peace Corps and you have no idea what might be there. Just give me that cocktail, please.
Wow.
Give me the fucking leprosy shot. Give me everything.
All of the above, A through Z.
Yeah, that was just grotesque. And then, this was one of those first ones where they do flash around to other areas. Like, you see things that happen before they're in the room. But, this is one of the first movies, big hit movies where it was just people in one room for most of it.
Yeah.
Most of this movie is... Carrie Elways and Lee Winnell, who plays the other lead. He hadn't really set himself up for this one. He wrote it and starred in it. He's like, I'm going to play one of the guys in it. Now we're going to get Carrie Elways to be the other guy, the well-known actor, but I'm going to be the other guy.
Yeah.
Good for him. And like they play most of the movie with just them on either side of a dirty, horrible bathroom with a corpse in between them that just lays there for the entire movie.
Damn.
And I did love how people were so outraged by the end when you find out that corpse that's just laid there that didn't move the entire thing is Jigsaw himself that's behind everything. That's why he was able to know what was going on and sabotage some of their plans that they were making and this sort of thing. And people were instantly like, oh my God, not one time did that guy breathe. I never saw him breathing. He can't be holding his breath for the entire, 2 hours that they were in there. That's why the first thing they do, and it's either the second or the third one, is they show him taking a shot and going, this will help me slow my breathing down and lay quietly, because they were like, fuck you guys, we're tired of hearing you complain about this. He took a shot, slowed his breathing down. You didn't notice it. Be quiet.
It only takes one line in the movie to explain everything.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. There's a great, in one of the, in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where they see Klingons from the original series that didn't have the makeup with the bumps on their head. And they ask Worf, are those Klingons? What the hell's going on? And he just looks at him and goes, it's a long story. And we don't talk about it.
Wow.
That's it. That's all you ever needed to know about that. Something happened. They're not going to talk about it. Great. Let's move on.
So what's your favorite kill? Do you remember any of them? I mean,
from the first one?
Yeah.
In the first one, I was a big fan of the reverse bear trap thing that Shawnee Smith had on, where if she didn't manage to get the key to it from inside her friend or boyfriend, I can't remember which one it was, she had to basically gut this person and search through their intestines for the key to take it off. So she managed to get it off in time before it ripped her head off, and that's what put her on the straight and narrow. And that one was my favorite because it's the iconic scene. You see her with the crazy eyes, and she's got that thing around her head, and they've turned that into Halloween masks now and everything because it's just one of those things. It's just such a confining thing to have around your head. It's like wearing one of those masks that they used to put on people in the old days.
Oh yeah, those old torture masks.
Yeah, the torture mask. It's like that. I liked that one a lot, and the barbed wire pit was horrifying too, because I don't know if you've ever cut yourself on any kind of barbed wire or anything like that. It's unpleasant.
I would not be here today if I had ever cut myself on some fucking barbed wire.
But yeah, those two are probably my favorite on it. And like I said, it was just such a fun thing to see that. That was one of the first horror movies I had seen probably since the original Scream, where, I saw it in a theater full of people who were all into it. They all got it. Everybody was on the wavelength of the movie and just followed it through,
Yeah.
So it was a blast seeing it, and I really enjoyed going to them every Halloween after that. I tried to either see them on Halloween night or as close to it as I could.
What was Shawnee Smith? What was her thing that she needed to get over? Was she a drug addict?
Yeah, she was a drug addict.
She was a drug addict. Okay.
I think she might have stolen some money and different things that he caught into. Because I remember in one of the later ones, they did show that she robbed the clinic where his wife worked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, they gave a lot more backstory to the people as it went along.
Yeah, I only asked because I was going to ask you, you were talking about how it was very similar to a torture mask, and there was many torture masks that were like that, but they were all like the scolds like brittle, or like the gossip brittle, like they were all for women.
Yeah.
And obviously the gossip one, to stop them from talking, but they were in a weird kind of mask, and it's just fucking creepy. Like, then I was like, oh, did she have something, like, was she ingesting the drugs, or was she like, I wonder if there was any like kind of connection, because it was like, oh, it's a woman and she's wearing something that is similar to those old ancient like medieval tortures, so you never know like why to design like certain things. The 4 shotguns blowing the fucking person's head off. Yeah. That was my kill. I like a good like head being blown off.
Yeah, there was a pretty good one in the original one too. I don't know if they ever actually used it. I think they stopped it before it happened, where like the drill was moving towards the guy's head.
Ew.
That was a pretty good one too, where it was just going to slowly drill through his head. That one was pretty creepy.
How about the one he was burned alive like he was a candle?
Ooh, yeah. That
actually I feel like would be the worst feeling one.
Yeah, because there's no stopping that once it starts.
Yeah. And
yeah, that guy.
And then you live for so long. It's not an instant death. That's a terrible death.
He just was like... And it's one of those things, like, the whole wall is just written with combinations. He's just got to, like, keep striking matches in order to see the combinations and keep trying when they're just all over the place, so...
That's another game. I would have also been dead. I could not do any of the combinations, like, during high school. I had to ask for, like, a regular, like, key lock, because I could not with the freaking combinations, the left and the right and the stopping right there, and then sometimes you gotta jiggle it. Oh my goodness, they were the freaking worst. That was a nightmare. I would have been like, look, bro, I'm not gonna even try. Just come here and bludgeon me. I'm not gonna do it. I would not last in these scenarios.
Yeah, and then like I said, the end of this movie, like the whole theater was just like freaked out, and then you just hear like, it's kind of like the iconic scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre where the, Leatherface slams the door. When Jigsaw just gets up and tells the guy the key to the handcuffs is on the tub stopper. And that's when you're like, oh, fuck, he let that thing slide down the drain at the very first scene of the movie. He's like, you can get out if you guys still have the key. And then just walks up and shuts the door and leaves. Just says like game over or whatever and shuts the door and just that's it, go to credits. And you're like, holy fuck. And then the whole theater just was like, like everybody's like shocked, clapping, going on. It was a great time.
Yeah. That would have, I can't, I'm trying to think, did I see that in the movie theater? But I have no recollection. I'd have to look back at my stub collection. But so many of my stubs, I mean, obviously are ancient. So
the thermal printing on them is starting to fade.
Yeah, for sure. Or they didn't even last like 2 years because, even though I would put them in the like acid free like photo book thing.
That thermal printing just fades after a while.
Yeah, so who knows? But now, are we going to give a rating to the Saw? We're just celebrating, right? We're not giving ratings.
Yeah, we're just celebrating it. Although if I was going to rate the original one, this one would be a 4-knifer for me. Because it really kind of set the standard for several years of what horror movies were going to be. Whether for good or bad, whether you like it or not, this is one of those ones that came along like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream. It kind of came along, changed the genre, and, revitalized horror there for a while. And, the sequels got increasingly... Some of them are better than others. I really like part 2 a lot, where it's the whole group of people going through kind of the maze down, in the, like, warehouse and all that.
Yeah.
That one's really fun. The only problem I had was that I thought they killed off Jigsaw too soon. Then they had to keep finding reasons to show him in flashbacks from part 4 to part 10. It still had to be in flashbacks.
Yeah.
So I wish they'd waited a little later to do that. I kept waiting for them to somehow undo that and come back and be like, nah, that really wasn't him. But they haven't done that. They've stuck with it. And just everything since has been some kind of a flashback or prequel. This latest one that they did, Saw 10, is actually pretty good. It's set in between 1 and 2, and it is really kind of goes back to it has the, you feel for why he's doing this, because these people that he goes after in this one are legitimate assholes. They're conning people who have cancer out of money and giving them a fake cure. They tell them they're going to come down and they're able to cure their cancer. They do this by sending people into cancer support groups to say that they have a terminal kind of cancer and let everybody recognize them. And then they see them later and come in and going, oh yeah, I'm cured. I went to this clinic down in South America, and for $50,000, they were able to cure me. People sell everything they have, go down there, and all they're giving them is a bunch of painkillers to make them feel better for a little while, and then running off with their money. So when he goes after these people, you're like, yeah, get them. Hurt those fuckers real bad.
Yeah.
Because they are ruthless, taking advantage of these people. So show them what it's like,
Probably, like, out of all the people in the franchise, those are the ones that deserved.
Yeah, they are the most deserving of it. Because the other people are assholes.
But then the point is to kill them, right? They're not supposed to be, like, redeemed. Because they're, far past redeemed.
He does give them a chance to get out.
Oh, he does?
They still have a chance to get out of it, but they're such assholes that they can't get beyond the fact that they're assholes to accomplish what they need to do.
Yeah. So, now, our next film is not the Blair Witch Project.
Next, we're moving on to another franchise that made crazy waves in horror for many years.
And started, I would say, well, look, yes, fine, Blair Witch, found footage, but I feel like that Paranormal Activity is a tad, and I use that very, very, slightly, tad more influential than Blair Witch.
Well, after Blair Witch came out, I was expecting a glut of Blair Witch ripoffs.
We got that fucking amazing Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows.
And that bombed hard.
Yes, it did. I did actually see it in the movie theater. I can tell you exactly where I sat in the theater. I remember that very vividly because I was so fucking disappointed. I was like, what is this bullshit that I have watched?
Yeah, because they decided in the second one, let's make it, instead of a found footage, let's just make it a regular narrative movie. And let's bring in a guy whose previous films are documentaries and have him do it. Which, if you were going to get a guy who has done documentaries mostly in his career, I forget his name, but he did that Paradise Lost documentary about the West Memphis 3. Why wouldn't you have him do it in found footage? Because I would think there's a guy who knows how to put clips together.
Yeah, but like documentary style.
Yeah.
You know?
Do it as a documentary about what happened to the first people in the first movie.
Everyone loves that documentary of the Blair Witch before the movie
Curse
even
of the
came
Blair
out.
Witch.
Yeah, so good. Better than the movie, actually. I have no care for that film. I actually like the most recent one that came out.
Yeah, the 2016 one?
But yes.
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
Better than the original because I was just like, no.
In terms of found footage movies, I've always thought that the better found footage movie of the 90s is Ghost Watch.
Okay.
The one from England where it's the news crew going to do a live seance. Mm-hmm. And that, I always thought that was a way better found footage movie than the Blair Witch. Blair Witch, to me, was always an interesting student film.
For sure.
Yeah, for a student film, if you pulled it aside and said, hey, 3 guys in college made this movie, I'd be like, all right, that's inventive and that's good. But it never really caught my interest as much as some of the other stuff did.
We went straight to the meat and we just skipped all the appetizer.
Yeah.
So the film came out in 2009, so celebrating its 15-year anniversary. It was written, directed, edited, the music, the whole thing, by Oren Peli.
And now this is one
I'm not going to say he did the music, but he did do all that other stuff.
He did do a lot of things on it. This is one of those ones, it was made for like $15,000.
$15,000, yep.
I think he charged it mostly on his credit cards.
He probably did, yep.
And the reason that I think this one was more successful and more influential is because...
It was in the film circuit for 2 years?
Yeah, that and Blair Witch is set out in the woods. You're running around, you're doing all this. Paranormal Activity was the one that said, what if it was just in your house?
Yeah, which is way scarier.
Because you live there, so you can't just...
And they updated it because technically, even though, yes, it's found footage, but it was through, like, cameras that they were putting in their house, which people have cameras in their house everywhere. The front door, the back door, inside, the baby's room. They're very common. So that he really, like, modernized it, which is crazy. Well, it's not that crazy because Blair Witch came out, 1999? 1998. So, it's just one of those things. And then, because it was in the circuit for, forever, waiting to get picked up at her, Paramount picked it up. And then Paramount put $200,000 to modify the film. And they changed the ending to the film. So... it earned, literally stateside, $108 million from $15,000. But this is the crazy question. Was Oren Peli able to pay back the credit cards? Or did they screw him over like they always do? And they're like, that movie hasn't even made money in the last 15 years.
I have heard that he was able to get his money back on that.
I'm glad.
Because I believe they picked it up for $300,000 or something like that. So even if he didn't get, a success of the other thing, he definitely got his money back he spent on it. Even though $350,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to how much they made.
So do you know that when they were testing the film after the modification, people were walking out of the screening, okay? And the DreamWorks executive at the time, Adam Goldman, he would, he found out oh my God, people are just leaving. He thought it was like a hot piece of garbage. Like people are just leaving the screening. And he found out that they were leaving the screening because they were just too scared. They could not handle it. That's why, I don't know if you remember when you would see the commercials, and I feel like they're the first ones to do that. I may be wrong because I don't remember the Blair Witch commercials. I only remember that damn documentary for the Blair Witch, the commercial for that. Was the audience reactions, the black and white, where they show the people getting scared and shit.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing that before in a commercial.
I remember seeing people coming out of the movies talking in it before, but now this is the thing. I don't know if I ever told you this or not. I was at one of those screenings where they were filming those commercials.
That's very cool. No.
Yeah, I went to see it at Universal about a month or so before it came out for wide release. They were showing it there at Universal only at midnight, on Friday night. And I went to one of those, and they were setting up in there, setting up the cameras and recording everyone, jumping around in the movie theater like that. And I've looked many times, you can't see me, because I was sitting up at near the top.
Damn.
And they were mostly filming down near the bottom. But this is also one of those movies where...
You would have been glowing, though, in the black and white.
Yeah. But where I was sitting there, and there was a guy sitting next to me that I didn't know. He was on the very last seat. And in the movie, at the very last scene of it, when Katie throws the guy up the stairs and hits the camera and knocks it over, he just reached down and grabbed my arm and screamed when that happened. And I about had a heart attack because I was not expecting the movie to be in 4D at that point. And I jumped and screamed when that happened. And then he looked at me and was like, I am so sorry. These movies freak me out. My friends left me, and I left me here in this seat by myself. They're all sitting over there. I just got so scared. He was telling me after the movie, and I'm like, it's okay, man. I just about had a heart attack, but you're good.
Those are not good friends.
No, they're not.
So for those of you who have not seen Paranormal Activity, or those of you who have not seen it in 15 years, refresher, you have Katie and Mika. They move in to suburban neighborhood, and they encounter or they experience disturbing, weird things in their house. It's always the little things. This little thing at first you're like, oh, it's so cool, and then it's it's not cool anymore. And I think the tipping point, because I have not seen this film in a long time, but I think the tipping point was when Katie finds the picture in the attic of her as a little girl, and it's an 80s picture because she's wearing one of those bib dresses where it's just this dress that has like a huge white bib. It was very popular.
Yeah.
It's called a bib. Obviously, she was a little girl, but it wasn't. Which now I think about it, like, why was that a thing? But yes. And she's like in the driveway. She's dressed in a nice dress. She looks like she's on the driveway. She's standing just somewhere. And the edges of the film kind of look like burned. And she's kind of like, you know, when you like put heat to the, you know, picture, it kind of like warps like colors and blends, and it's weird looking, like pink and bluish. It looks like that. And you're like, how the hell? But let me go back. There is nothing else in this attic. It's not like the attic was full of boxes and she just happened to stumble upon the picture that may or may have fallen out of a fucking box. No, there's nothing in the attic. There's just this one fucking picture. And so you're like, I don't know. That's kind of sus. It looked like the devil was holding the picture. It fucking burned up.
Which, you know, later on you find out might partially be true.
Now, this is when they decide they're going to set up cameras in the house to see what the hell's going on. And then you slowly see, which, mind you, yes, I had seen, I couldn't even tell you how many horror movies by this point. So I guess I should have seen this coming. But you slowly start to notice that Katie is becoming possessed. Because possession is always the slightest things. And it always feeds off your fear. It's like, oh, I left my toothbrush here, and then I look and it's like gone across the counter. Or, oh, like the random thing with the picture. It's like little things. But then in the nighttime, she starts like sleepwalking. She starts like doing weird things. And that's when you're like at rest, right? So that's a perfect time for like you to be possessed, because you can't fight it, you know. And if anything, you might think it's a dream. So you're like, okay, this is just a dream. I'm just going to go with it, you know. So you start seeing her change. You know, I do have to say, also from what I remember, Mika was an asshole. So there were times where I just didn't, I was like, yeah, get his ass, you know?
I did love the part in this where the psychic comes to visit and it's just like, yeah, no, I'm not staying here. This place is evil. Get the fuck out. I'm not going to hang out in here. This is not a good time for anyone. I'm getting the fuck out. And you're like, oh, okay. That's probably not a good sign there.
Yeah, because at least in other movies, they go through the whole, you know, the whole seance or the whole whatever, and it's not like someone just reacts like instantaneously, like right then and there. It's like, nope.
I also love this too, where they bring the Ouija board in, and someone's like, yeah, I wouldn't bring one of those in this house. That's not a good idea. And so instantly Micah's like, oh yeah, let me just bring that in the house immediately. And then he leaves it sitting on the table there in the living room, and they leave, and it just bursts into flames when they leave. They're like, they told you not to bring it in, bitch. They told you not to bring it in.
This film didn't have any cry snot, so that made it awesome, you know, like the Blair Witch did when Heather's like real snotty.
Oh,
like,
the cry snot.
You know, it's like it's raining in the camera. You know, we don't have that. Also, not that they were I don't want to say they were not believable couple, but like, you've seen this house. You've probably been to a house like this, like the layout of the house. You know, they were too normal. They were just average looking people, like everyday people. They weren't, you know, obviously at the time this wasn't a thing, but they weren't like influencers. They weren't glammed up. They weren't wearing whatever. They were just wearing basic clothes. They were just normal people that were going through this. So it felt very real. It felt like you were in this scenario with these people. You're experiencing it.
I was living in an apartment at the time that had the exact same cabinets that they did.
Hell no.
There was like, oh, those are the same cabinets. So obviously they went to the same Home Depot and just got that shit, you know.
Did you look in the cabinets when you got home?
No, I did not.
No.
I don't even know what's in there.
Now, so far we have 7 films.
There's
in this
Paranormal Activity 1 through 5. They kind of ended with the Ghost Dimension, but there was the side film that was the marked ones.
The best movie, actually.
And then the most recent one they did, this Paranormal Activity, where, well, you know, the most interesting part of that new one was at the very end, and they just kind of stopped.
That was the interesting part when the movie ended. That I agree with you.
No, I'm saying like the idea, like that there was somehow evil contained in this barn. They let it out, and then it's going out and starting to spread, and people are doing this crazy stuff. I was like, that's what I want to see more of, is what's happening there. And I guess that one didn't do well enough that they bothered to follow up on it. Now, of the sequels, the second one, I thought did a great job of, it starts out with Katie and Micah, or Katie's sister and her family, and you see exactly how it plays into it and what happened to the family a little bit and why it's affecting Katie and Micah in the first one. I thought they did a great job at setting all that up.
I don't know how Christopher Landon did so terribly with that Next Kin one, the last one, but yet the marked ones is amazing. I love the marked ones.
And part 3 is pretty good too, because there's a great scene that I love in that one where the camera is going back and forth on like, you know, it's just moving back and forth, and you see like the sheet moving across the house slowly, just getting closer to someone, and then just as she turns around, the sheet just drops.
Oh, yeah.
I love that part. But now, the thing I always found a little bit annoying in part 3 was the trailer for it shows them like involved in the house fire and all that, but you don't really see that on camera. So I was always a little bit annoyed by that. But I loved that one as well. 4 was the one where it was kind of like, okay, what are we doing here? There's nothing really. We're dealing with different people now. I don't understand.
Yeah, that one was really terrible. And then it didn't tie in. Look, I don't care about anything. I feel like when it comes to past, like, I like the Mark ones because at least they tied it in to what was happening. Like, because when they're going back in time, they stop into the house when the witches and like...
Oh my God, that's the greatest fucking scene ever. Where the witches run at the guy and he just blows her away with the sawed-off shotgun. I'm like, oh, can we just have the whole movie where it's just a street gang versus witches?
Yeah,
that was amazing.
After the Mark ones, it was over for me. I didn't care for part 3. I mean, I didn't care for part 4. If I had to put them in order, I'm going to say it's 3, 1, 3, 1. No, 3, 2, 1 marked ones, which is weird because I'm like, I should have the number one at the top. But I was more interested in, because yes, it is set in the 80s, so there's nostalgia there, but it had a classic like 70s, 80s story with these little girls that have been like sold off or bartered off or whatever to this demon, and how they're, supposed to whatever do what the demon needs them to do, or whatever, because that's the thing, and I may be wrong, but I don't remember there ever being any like, why did he want them? Are they brides? Are they supposed to bear like, the fucking coming of the end of the world to a child? Like, what was the thing?
We never quite found out, because remember at the end, Katie just walks off at the end of the first one. In part 2, we find out she goes back to her sister's house and takes care of business and walks away with the baby.
Yes.
And then we never really know what happened to the baby after that.
No, we don't.
So I was waiting for them to do a follow-up to this where they finish it off. Like, I feel like one more movie where they tie up the loose ends would be great.
Yeah, tie up the loose ends, Paranormal Activity. Chris Landon, like, yeah, you had Mark ones, but that other one was a dud. Make another Happy Death Day. That's what I want to see. I want to see Happy Death Day 3 or wherever number we're at.
I heard they were trying to cross over Happy Death Day with the Freaky. It's going to be Freaky Death Day.
I love it. I love both of those movies.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But Paranormal Activity. So I do remember seeing this at the theater. There were moments where it got me, for sure. And later on, like way later on, like the 6 years ago, when I had to buy my first black and white camera for, our child's room, the first thing that came into my mind was Paranormal Activity. I'm going to see some crazy shit. I'm going to be watching her, and all of a sudden, that clown doll or some fuckery is going to happen floating across the room, or I'm going to see like the monster under the bed trying to creep up. I'm going to view something that is going to freak me the fuck out. And I'm going to have to think at that point, am I jumping out the window that's conveniently right beside me? Or am I going to save my kid upstairs? I don't know. I don't know what.
Do you remember when, I don't know if they still, I don't think they still sell them anymore, but like Spirit Halloween for a while and some of the other places used to sell these disposable cameras that had like ghost images on them.
That's amazing though. I've never seen this.
Yeah, they had cameras that had already had pre-exposed like a ghost in the background, and you would just take a picture of like yourself sitting on the couch, and there would be like a ghost face behind you. Now the images were just kind of random, so sometimes they looked really out of place, but sometimes they were perfectly placed where it would just be like a ghostly like little girl like peeking through the window behind someone or something. It just happened to work out, be perfectly placed. Now the best thing, whatever, it was when I used to work at Walgreens, and they would have the people would process the film, and someone slipped on one of those cameras, and they didn't know it was the ghost camera.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
And then they would get the film back and be like, what the fuck is this? Why is there a goddamn little girl ghost from the 1800s standing in the back of this picture? And just freak the fuck out. And then we would tell them, like, no, this is what it is. They'd be like, my goddamn brother did this to me. He gave me that camera to take pictures with, and he fucking knew it was one of those cameras, and he just wanted to scare the shit out of me.
Wow.
And that happened several times. People didn't know that they had been given those cameras, and it was like,
we need to find this camera or write a letter. They need to make this camera again, because this sounds
great.
Amazing, and I'm pissed that I fucking missed out on it.
You used to be able to get them at Spirit and some other places like that. It was amazing. Like I said, the images didn't always look right. Sometimes it would be like, if someone was standing, or if they turned the camera the wrong way, then the image came out looking really weird. It was like the ghost was sideways or whatever, and it didn't fit. But if you got it just right, it was perfect.
I am going right now to make a video and plead that they come out with this camera again. Next year, let's do some retro shit. This year, they had the mystery boxes that look like VHS cases, the clamshell cases. Let's do this camera, baby. Like, I need this in my life. For sure.
Yeah, this movie, like, again, this was another one that started in 2009, like when they were like, okay, I think the Saw is starting to wind down a little bit. Let's start cranking out these Paranormal Activity movies. And they started popping them out around Halloween every year, or close to it, maybe a little bit after.
October 29th, like Saw came out October 29th.
Yeah, they started putting them out in October and that kind of stuff. And it was great to, again, like, all right, this is going to be the new tradition. Halloween movie time, we're going to go see this.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. And the first three are really good. And the marked ones is good. So those four are probably my favorites. And like I said, I like the idea of this last one, where they went to like an Amish kind of thing, where there was no technology, and they're the only ones with cameras recording what's going on. And at the end of it, when everything goes crazy, I was like, okay, this should have been the start of the movie. It should have started here. And maybe flashed back a couple of times and showed like how this happened, and then see the world from there. That would have been great, but they didn't really do that.
Yeah, because the whole thing is like this, but then they like took it like, oh, it's aliens. Wasn't it aliens?
No, it wasn't aliens. It was still some kind of a
because it was like underground, and
they had it like contained underground. They had this like creature that was, or person that was infected with it, and the evil in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really the first three kind of are a perfect trilogy. And then as a off to the side, watch the marked ones. Because the marked ones is so good, but like the theater just cheered when that fucking guy just takes that shotgun and blows the whistle. He just runs like, and he just bam, blows her away. That was so good.
I was not expecting that to be as good as it was. So that's why I like really like it, because it's not, I went in like, okay, whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. This is pretty good. I am not mad about this.
Yeah, this is just, I wasn't expecting it, and that's why it had no, I went in with no expectations, and it just blew me away. I love that one.
Yeah, well, if I had to, I would say both movies for me 3 stars.
Yeah, for Saw and Paranormal Activity?
For Saw and Paranormal. I didn't give my rating and the other. I've been thinking about it this whole time.
Yeah, for me, the first Paranormal Activity is a good 3-star one. Again, it's a good, like, student kind of film. Like, he had worked on some other things and had a little bit of TV and movie experience. But again, this is a perfect first movie for someone. because there's not very many people in it. You don't have to deal with a ton of actors. You don't have to deal with a ton of set locations. It's pretty much the one house throughout the whole movie, just dealing with the rooms of that, which, who knows, for all we know, that was probably his house.
Yeah.
But then that's kind of the genius of it. It's self-contained and still manages to pull off all the scares.
Yeah. I agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this special episode, close to Halloween. We're 10 days to Halloween, and I'm very excited.
Or 9 days when this comes out.
9 days till Halloween, yes. It would be cooler if we released this today, because then it'd be 10 days, but fine. 9 days to Halloween. We're 1 day closer. And we've given you this Saw / Paranormal Activity celebration. Thank you so much. Stay tuned to the horror.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.